this week's Technique Tuesday video, we're going to get twisted. We'll look at different ways to produce right twists and left twists. There are a number of options, so I've put written instructions to the various methods down in the video description. And as always, if you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, there are direct links down in the description as well. This is a swatch that has two different baby cables. Each of these cables has two regular knit stitches. They are not twisted stitches, they're just regular knit stitches. And in this case, the cable is crossing to the right, and in this case, is crossing to the left. Now you could use a cable needle to make this cable crossing happen, just like you could do if you were having multiple stitches crossing over multiple other stitches. But typically, when you see a two-stitch cable like this appear in a knitting pattern, they call them a left twist or right twist, and the instructions call for working these without using a cable needle. So this swatch here has 4 different right twists and 4 different left twists. These 4 twists over here create a result that is identical to the result I showed you at first, this version where you could use a cable needle. None of these used a cable needle, but they all create the identical result that using a cable needle would create. The 4 twists on this side of the swatch use techniques that create a result that is very similar to those over here, but not identical, and frequently are considered easier to execute. Possibly the most common method of producing a right twist is to do the following. You knit the 2 stitches together, but you do not let the 2 stitches on the needle, on the left-hand needle, fall off. So you've got a new stitch on the right-hand needle, you do not let these stitches fall off. I'm going to hold the second one with my fingernail, and I'm going to knit that first stitch a second time. And that produces the cross. What I've actually done here is I've done a right leaning decrease, which is a knit 2 together, followed by an increase. The easiest method of producing a left twist, it's to knit through the second stitch through the back, and you come through just that stitch itself. Let's see if I can show you. I'm just coming back through that particular stitch that I went through. And then I would knit through the front of the first stitch on the needle. So I'm only knitting into each stitch once, and I'm knitting them out of order. So this is technically like a true cable cross, except the stitch in the back was worked through the back leg, which twists it. You can't see that with this other stitch on top, but the stitch underneath is twisted. So this is not exactly like the left twist on here, because these 2 stitches were both knit so that they were untwisted, but for this one, the stitch in the back is twisted. The next method of producing a right twist is to knit through the second stitch from the front. You're going to insert your needle through that stitch from front to back. So you're actually going through the center of that stitch, and your needle is coming out behind. So you see that this first stitch is to the right of your needle. You're going to grab your yarn and pull it back through to the front. And then you're going to knit that first stitch. Now, I want you to see what's going on behind here is the working yarn is actually between those 2 stitches right now. So the working yarn is to the left of this first stitch. What happens is you end up getting this, it looks kind of like a purl bump underneath here. And this comes from having that working yarn between the 2 stitches when you go to work the stitch that's first on the needle, the second stitch that's worked, but the first stitch on the needle. The very first right twist was really a mock cable. It was a right leaning decrease followed by an increase. This left twist is the exact mirror of that. It's going to be an increase with a left leaning decrease next to it. And you do that by slipping these two stitches as if to knit, just like you were doing an SSK decrease. So you've remounted the stitches on the needle, and then you're going to return them. You're going to have your needles pointing toward each other as you return those stitches so that that new stitch mount is maintained. Now you're going to go through the back of that second stitch and knit it. And now you're going to go through both of these stitches to create an SSK decrease. So you've had your increased stitch and now you're working your decreased stitch. So this is a structural mirror to that first right twist. These two are structural mirrors. Now we're going to get into the right and left twists that produce the exact structural result as a standard cable. This first right twist is going to be very similar to this right twist that we worked previously, with one difference. So this time you're going to knit through the second stitch first, but you're going to do it by coming under that front leg and then putting the tip of the needle to the right of the first stitch. So you're coming around the outside. You're going to knit that stitch. So you have to come back through where you went in. And now you're going to knit that first stitch. And notice this time the working yarn is to the right of this stitch that's on the needle. And that is what makes a difference in getting an exact structural match to a cable as opposed to what you get with this one. Now we're going to do a left twist. Again, it's very similar to the left twist that we did over here. You're going to slip two stitches as if to knit, just like you would for an SSK. You're going to return them. And this time you're going to knit each of these stitches once. You're not going to do a decrease. You're going to come through that second stitch from the back. You're going to knit it. I'm going to use my fingernail again to hold that apart. And then you're going to knit through the first stitch through the back rather than doing it as a decrease. So again, you have created a cable crossing that is structurally identical to a true cable crossing. These last two are kind of futzy and probably not really that useful in a project, but they're very interesting to try out because it can teach you a lot about how stitches change when you slip them together. So for this first one, we're going to slip the two stitches together as if to knit, and watch what happens. We've got these two stitches mounted on the needle. See, watch what happens to the one that's on the left. When you slip them off, it is now on the right. So just like when you slip them one at a time as if to knit, we have remounted them. But not only have we remounted them, we have reordered them. Now we're going to slip them back to the left needle, making sure that we keep the mount and the order that we had. And because they have been remounted, we need to knit them through the back so that they won't be twisted. So we go through the center of this stitch and we're pushing against that right leg, which is hanging over the back. And now we knit through the back of the second one as well because it had also been remounted on the needle. And that will produce a right twist. This last one is the futziest of all, but it again is really interesting to see what happens when you are slipping stitches. So for this one, you're going to slip the two stitches together as if you are purling through the back loop. Now, anytime you purl through the back loop, you want to point your left needle at you so that you can see what you're doing from behind. So you're going to come through these two stitches from behind, and it helps to have a pointy needle like I have. And you're going to slip them off. And again, it's reordering them, but you'll also see that it's twisted these stitches. You can see the legs are crossing. When we return them, we're going to return them one at a time. We're going to bring the left needle from behind like this, that's going to take the twist out of them. So now they're still reordered, but they're not twisted. And now we can knit them like a normal stitch through the front. And that produces a left twist. The techniques I showed you today can all be used to produce right and left twists that use regular knit stitches. These twists are used in a wide range of projects, but some patterns incorporate two-stitch twists where the two stitches are not regular knits. You might have one twisted knit crossing another, or a twisted knit crossing a purl. These crossings can be done without a cable needle as well, but not using the methods shown today. Next week, I'll demonstrate a method of cabling without a cable needle that can be used in a wider range of situations, regardless of whether the stitches are regular knits, twisted knits, or purls, and even when more than two stitches are involved. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.